Hey everybody, we don't have anybody here yet. The alert just went out. I know some of y'all will listen to this. There's Richard. Thanks for joining, Richard. Hold on just a second. Let me get this jamming cut off here. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. This is Roger, uh, Squatch and Holler, and this is new. I'm not professional. I started this to learn because I have learned so much, met so many great people. We got an awesome guest tonight. We've got some audio that Mark Newbill, Sawdust Beast team, have let us use. We're going to just turn it over to Bama and let him educate us because I've been through LBL, but I've never went to camp. I went straight through one time, didn't know the history, and now I do. So I want to learn a little bit before I go. So let's add Mr. Bama. Bama, how you doing today?
Man, we
Tonight?
made it, didn't we?
We did. I've been panicking and scrambling since 5 o'clock trying to figure out some sound issues, and I appreciate you being here. We got people are coming in. If, if for those who's never even watched the show with Bama, you were a police officer for 20 years in Nashville. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I don't normally tell folks that. Uh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's okay. I, I have been out of it for a while,
Yeah.
but it really is what got me going to LBL. Because I was a police officer, in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm an Alabama guy. I'm back down in Alabama now.
Back home.
Uh, born and raised down here, but when I lived up there, man, I lived really, urban. Uh, I've lived in one of the tallest. I've lived in the tallest skyscraper in downtown Nashville. In subdivisions, like a lot of people can relate to that. But that and never really knew LBL existed. But it's just up above that central Tennessee going up into Kentucky.
Yeah, it's not a far drive for you. I can be there in under 2 hours, hour and a half maybe. Um, like I said, it was. I was surprised. We went from the southern end to the northern end and just made a loop, and I was surprised how big that place is. Did not know the history, thank goodness, when we went through. But um, you, I know you camped there. And I think you and Moose you camp by yourself, and you said you met a group of people for the first time, and you know he had some experiences before, but he's told that on other shows, and we can point you to it. Uh, Tell us about going with a group for the first time.
Yeah, for people that's heard me talk before, uh, you can really look back at some of the other shows and find out really the things that happened to me at a certain campsite at LBL, a long time campsite that we had, camped at and hunted out of and fished out of for years. Uh, and that's really what got me interested in the subject because I things happened there, rock throwing, some really the screams, uh, and a couple of other things. But I always say this: it's either one of the best things I've done or the worst things I've done. But I went home directly and Googled, stuff about LBL,
Hmm.
and just I mean that sends you down a rabbit hole, just with a lot of strangeness, and you really have to filter through a lot of uh, stuff in the Bigfoot world. I mean, that's ultimately where it leads you to. And I'd really never thought about that. But, and the reason that Roger and I'm telling this to the people listening, Roger and I had discussed this. And I said, there's a lot of people that something will happen to them and they end up joining a group or they think about finding a group close to them or something. And that's why I wanted to tell it this way, because this really is, how I began, hanging out with folks that knew a lot more than I did. And that's what you should strive to do. Find
And
people that are, educated.
and that's exactly why I'm doing this here, because I was exposed to Bigfoot years ago, and I'm soaking everything in. I'm learning this way, so I totally understand.
Well, of course, I listened to lots of stories from just LBL. This is Land Between the Lakes, if anybody's not familiar with it. By the way, I can see the chat, so if you see me looking over there at the big screen, uh,
You're
hey to
good.
everybody in the
I
chat,
know.
and
Chat's
hey to
awesome.
everybody listening. Um, but somehow I had come upon a group of people, and and then I found some of their stuff on YouTube, kind of like what your people will research one day, Roger, and mine and your video right now will come up long after we're dead. This
Hmm.
will still come up.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, these people popped up on YouTube, and this was a group that was called Sawdust Beast. Now, we have our own YouTube channel, and most people are familiar with that. We have a Facebook page and stuff. But this consisted of just a very few members at the time. I don't know any of this, but I kind of started corresponding with them, and texting and things along that line. Well, eventually they asked me, they said, would you like to come up to Land Between the Lakes and meet us in camp? And I'm just from all the things I've done over the years, I just thought, man, do I want to go off in the woods somewhere where I'm not familiar with a bunch of strangers,
Right.
you know? But I just had this feeling, and so I decided to go up there. When I say we, I'm usually talking about Moose and I. Now, this dog's been with me since he's probably 10 now. He's laying right here. I got him when he was 7 months old, and he started out 2 days after I got him. He was at LBL. So he's just been in the woods and, in the mountains hiking and camping his whole life. So me and Moose loaded up, headed up there, and another guy was going to meet us also. And this is a guy by the name of Spencer Jameson. Now he has a YouTube channel called Woodwalkers, and him and uh, Misty, and she's in the chat right now.
Yeah.
He was going to meet them up there too. Now he had never met these people in person, but he really corresponded with them a lot more than I have. And y'all bear with me. Anybody that's listened to me, I try to tell enough detail to where I want to paint a picture of it for you. So if you're not sitting here having to look at my face, this is what I always tell people. If you're a long haul trucker, I do this so people can listen to the story.
Yeah.
So
And it
bear with me.
painting a picture is the way it is. That's why you're such a good guest, because you ask people like, "Hey, did you see a Bigfoot?" Yep, he's big and he was brown. that's that's hard to do a show with that,
Yeah,
But go ahead, you're good. I promise you.
man, we went up there, and uh, this was up in the north end of Land Between the Lakes. And I'd never been up in the north end because my hunting license, which was a Tennessee license, so I always hunted the Tennessee end, which is the south end. LBL is like a big, rectangle that sits on its end upright. It runs straight up into Kentucky. It's a really wild area, lots of big waterways. And when I first started going there, I likened it to the Pacific Northwest. There's places down in there where in the middle of the day, it's just downright gloomy and dark in those places.
Gets dark 2 hours earlier than most places.
So, man, I'm going to go up and meet some people that I've never met before in this jungle, wherever. Well, we kind of had a camping place where we're going to meet up, and they sent us a pin on a map, you know, kind of at the last minute. Well, when you get up there, you certainly don't have any type of a cell signal or a phone signal or anything like that. But somehow I kind of ended up in the area I thought it was, and I just got out and pulled over on the side of the road and sat on the tailgate and let moose out to run around. It wasn't a while later, maybe a couple of hours later, a pickup truck showed up, and out gets a guy named Spencer James. And he and I, texted and corresponded a little bit back and forth. So, man, we just started talking, and we said, man, let's just walk off in the woods. So we just started walking around till everybody else got there. Long story short, we walked a lot of fields that had been plowed, and just kind of looking for tracks and getting up into the woods. And he's really good at stick structures and manipulations and stuff. And he was kind of picking out some things. And I'm not great at that. That's just not my thing. There's some people that are really good at that type of stuff. But one thing we did find, and this will be pertinent later, we found a pond that was fed by a year-round spring up in the woods off of a field, like a back field, a plowed field back there. And I could tell that the hogs had been used. I mean, one part of it was even muddy up at one end, but otherwise it was clear. This was in May when we met them, one of the worst times other than probably August to be at Land Between the Lakes because of the ticks and mosquitoes and copperheads and stuff. But we found this pond up there and we explored it. And by the time we walked out, these vehicles start showing up. People get out. And of course, there comes a man named Mark Newell, and he's got a research partner, Larry Ports II. And here's a couple of ladies. Here's Debbie Jones and Shelly Reed. And those four people get out.
A good crew.
And we're kind of, I don't know anything about them yet. But we kind of chit-chatted around there a few minutes, and we walked back up in the woods and took them up in there, kind of showed what we were looking at. Well, when we come out, I'd heard several vehicles up on a roadway pass back and forth and back and forth. And me, I just kind of know things, and I thought, man, there's somebody wondering what we're doing back in here. The first thing that happens when we came out, there was people from the Forestry Service or rangers or stuff that was out there where our vehicles was at. And of course, here you have vehicles with Bigfoot stickers and stuff on the back of them. They knew what we were doing in there. But we didn't realize that we were parked illegally, off a roadway where we shouldn't have been. So, but anyway, we just asked them, where can we park at? Can we park right on the side of the road? And they said, well, sure, you can just park on the side of the road. Well, and I want to tell people that these vocals that we're talking about that we're going to play later plays into this area where we end up spending this weekend at. We get in our vehicles and we drive maybe 500 yards on down this road, and there's a creek that actually crosses the road. You dip down and drive through this little creek, and we come out the other side, man, and Mark pulled over. We got out and we said, well, man, where are we going to camp at? And he literally just kind of looked around across these fields, and they had been plowed or harvested or something, but the corn was coming up maybe about just a few inches high, and it was sparse even at that, so it was basically kind of like walking across a semi muddy field. And he just kind of looked around, and he just he literally just pointed across the field, and he goes, man, we're going over there. And I said, where? He goes, man, we're just going to walk off into the woods and camp in the woods. Now, I kind of designed myself that weekend to truck camp, so I have a big Coleman stove and, all this kind of stuff. Man, I figured out that wasn't going to fly.
It's funny.
But long story short, we stepped off into the woods, maybe about 30 yards off this field, and you went in through a dip and you came up on a little peninsula. And for everybody listening, if you were standing and looking into the woods at this, you would realize that when that little creek got up or flooded, it probably flowed all the way around this little piece of land. So we were kind of up on a little dry island. And, it's really jungly in there, lots of undergrowth. It's a wonder one of us didn't get bit by a copperhead or something.
Yeah.
But we just went in there in the woods, put our tents out kind of in a circle. And it's my tent. Imagine if you're sitting looking out the door of my little 2-man tent. And to the left of me is Mark and Shelly are in one big tent. Straight across from me, Spencer Jameson, like a small 2-man type deal like I've got. And then almost to the right of me is, like 2 o'clock here, is Larry and Debbie in a tent. We put a fire ring in the middle. By the time we got everything set up, we basically, tromped down all the undergrowth. So it was, nice and cool in there because it was pretty stuffy and humid. And we kind of sat around there and just kind of enjoyed each other's company and talked a while and cooked stuff right there and, made trips back and forth across that field, just kind of like bringing more stuff or, maybe I'll go blow up my air mattress and bring it back. We're, doing stuff like that. Well, we really, by the time we got set up, it was getting dark and we built a fire and we all stayed up pretty late. Didn't go out anywhere, anything like that. And but the next morning we got in vehicles and man, we were just going places and looking at stuff and LBL has lots of those old homestead cemeteries and we just kind of like just going around looking at stuff like tourists, but otherwise we're just kind of in the woods. Well, we got back after it got dark, and this is hopefully if you this is a group of folks that they're kind people, they're smart, there isn't any drama in this group. That's one reason why I like it, and that's why I picked them. And I think they just really felt us out, and I think they really wanted to know that they could depend on us because I had no idea what I was in store for. But we sat there and I'm telling you what, we were worn out and long about 10, maybe 11 o'clock, 12, maybe midnight. I was thinking, man, I'm wore out. I'm ready to go to bed. And one of them goes, well, let's go. And I looked around and I said, let's go where? And they said, man, let's go boogering. And I thought, okay. Now, Moose is on my schedule. So he's just in complete shock as to he hasn't gotten any rest. He's just in and out of a truck all day. And so, man, we load him up and get in 2 vehicles. And we drive all the way south through land between the lakes to a little bitty town called Dover, Tennessee. For anybody that doesn't know, Dover is really at the south end. And then there's a road cut straight up the middle of land between the lakes.
Is there a fort close by?
What's that?
Is there a fort close by in Dover?
Yes, there is.
Maybe I'm thinking, okay.
I can't remember the name of it, but there sure is.
Okay. I got the right spot.
Well, we really, we drove down to Dover and there is a place there that's open all night, believe it or not. So people are walking and we're starting to look pretty, we're nasty and we've been hot and sticky and we got on several coatings of bug spray by this time, and we ease in there at that time of night and, to get, everybody's getting coffee and things, things along that line because they're trying to stay away. And I really didn't know what was going to go on at this time. Well, we got to driving and stopped at a spot. I'd never heard anybody do a call before, like an organized call before. And somebody did a call and it just scared the bejesus out of me. Because we're in the pitch black. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know any other protocol other than be quiet, don't slam doors when you get out, that type of stuff. I even have a collar on moose when we're out like that, and that doesn't make any noise, doesn't jingle or anything. I'm used to running dogs with choke chains. Well, then we go to this second spot, and we get out, and this is just a road in LBL, but a paved road. And it was really pretty. The sky was clear. You could see all the stars. And that's one of the first things I noticed when we got out and we parked. We got out on this roadway. And if you stood there long enough, just the light from the stars gave enough ambient light to where you could kind of see people. You could see the light roadway that you were standing on. And before long, after my eyes got used to it, I realized that if I'm looking, y'all picture this, if you're looking up this long, straight, paved, slag roadway, off to your left, the road just drops off, and it's bush hog, just nice and smooth, and it drops off into a field of maybe about 4 acres down there, 4 or 5 acres. And you could look off down there, and just that little bit of starlight would illuminate this heavy, like a fog or a dew point across that field down there. And it's really pretty, because then you could look up it's so bright you could see the Milky Way out there. And we were me and Shelly Reed were kind of whispering about, how clear it was. And if you turn and looked to the other side of the road, it went up a long hillside, and this was a field. It was had something growing in it. It really looked as, at that time of night, it looked as smooth as a golf course up through there. And this was huge. This thing covered 15, 20 acres. But when you looked up there, you were looking at a field that, and I realized this later from going back, and it ends up at a tree line. But up at one end, the field's kind of cut up into the woods and goes back up into a hollow. And that's kind of pertinent to the story. We get out there, and we're standing there, and really one thing you learn is to let the vehicles cool down some. They make a lot of popping noises and things along that line. And this isn't me knowing these things. These are things that were taught to me. People had their recorders going. Spencer Jameson had a recorder and was standing right next to me. And Mark Newell has a recorder that he puts on a telescoping pole. So when he gets out, the recorder's up really high, so you don't get a lot of the foot scuffling or the whispering, because anytime you hear anything, somebody's going to go, "Did you hear that?" I mean, it's just a natural.
Automatic, yeah.
Listen, and those aren't rookies at it or anything that do that. Everybody does that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people have done it for years. I've been out with them, and because you want to know that you heard the same thing.
Right.
But people had recorders going, and some people had FLIRs going also. Now, after my first things that happened to me at LBL, and with all the hiking I do and camping I do with the dog, I bought a small FLIR, because I'm in places where I hear things, and I just, in the mountains, and I think, man, I wonder if that's a bear. I mean, really, things up on the mountainside, tearing stuff up. So that FLIR gives you a sense of security, or it does me. So people had FLIRs out. All to say this, folks. We're standing there spread out on that long roadway, illuminated by those stars. There were so many fireflies in that lower field that when they lit up, you could clearly see each other standing next to each other.
That's
so we
amazing.
named that place Firefly Landing, almost like the synchronized fireflies that people pay money to go, see in the Smoky Mountains.
Right.
But we're just kind of standing there watching that. everything got calmed down, and it felt like things just closed back in around us, like everything's, normal, and everything's calmed down, and not much insect noise either. It was stuffy out there, but it was a really nice night. Somebody did a call and nothing, and that call carried off up into I forget even what direction they did the call. And I just thought, man, the whole time I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? I mean, what what am I doing out here,
What
man?
am I doing? Yeah. Who are these people?
And but then Larry Porch, uh, he did another call, and this time he turned off to the right, and he, did his call up that hill there. And like I said, this is the first time I've ever heard people do calls. People are pretty uh, protective of the calls that they do, especially the ones that get results. And I felt really lucky to be entrusted, with getting to hear them and stuff like that, and later getting to do them. When he did that second call, y'all, by the time his voice reached the top of that hill, and it's almost kind of like he turned at an angle and did it off up in that corner that went up into the hollow there. There was a vocalization came back, and see if you can picture this, as I describe it to you. When I first heard it, it sounded like a man starting to yell, like a man's voice. And it's funny how, and it's not just me, but I guess it's from doing what I did for years. So many things will pop through my head really quick, and things either fit right into a neat little puzzle piece or they don't, because almost, you know, I know a lot of things. But man, when this vocalization started, it sounded like a man yelling. Automatically, something in my head said, "That's a man up there, and they're punking you out
Right.
here." I thought they're punking me. But as it went on, it really changed more into starting a long howl. But really, the thing that hit me first was the volume as it came down the hill. Now, it's not one of those where I could feel it in my chest or something like that. But I went to Nashville as a musician, and and this was really loud. I mean, when it came down, uh, but I knew it was from a long way off. It turned into a howl, and then it was almost like another vocalization came in and harmonized with the first one.
Wow.
And Spencer standing right next to me with his recorder. And we've done this on some previous shows, on Sawdust Beast and on the Woodwalker show. He played these vocals because it's his show. He recorded them, and he and I were standing next to each other. But the vocals went on for so long, and the howls went on for so long, that on his tape, I won't say what I said on the tape, but I said, "Man, are you kidding me?" And Spencer, he goes, "Shh," like that. And they're still going on. And then all the coyotes bust in with them. And the coyotes are howling and yipping and stuff like that. We really went, we we didn't get any more vocals from that spot that night. We got in our vehicles and hit a couple of other spots and finally made it back to camp. And honestly, when we got back to camp, nobody really had a discussion. We didn't start a fire. Everybody was exhausted. I mean, people really just opened tents up and got in there and just passed out. Spencer doesn't remember this, but this is the truth. He was so tired that when he went and got in his tent, he left his light on in there. So it's kind of like there's a glow out there all night.
Yeah.
Well, the night before we had heard coyotes way off and sometimes close while we were in our tents. And but this night, man, everybody's pretty sacked out. And I'm a light sleeper, but I'm telling you, I was worn out. Me and Moose are piled up in that little 2-man tent and asleep. And I don't know what time it was, but it had to be somewhere around maybe 4 o'clock in the morning before birds, start thinking about chirping or anything. And well, I heard footsteps, in the leaves, or a little twig break or something like that. But I've camped up there so long and I'm so wary about hearing things that I know what an armadillo sounds like now when it comes to, I mean, they make a big racket. I mean, and there's no cadence to it or anything. This really was like an intentional person walking, and they weren't uh, trying to be quiet, but they were trying not to be noisy, if that makes sense.
Right.
Kind of like if you were walking into your deer stand and you just kind of, testing your foot,
Right.
on the ground. Well, I woke up and the steps came right in front of, I have a little vestibule on that little 2-man tent. It came right in front of the vestibule of that tent and went right behind my head. And my head was sleeping there, and Moose is at my feet. Because right behind my head's where you could step off that little peninsula and walk back to the tree we'd been using. My vestibule on my right side, I had camped so close to that little peninsula that I really didn't have a vestibule. It just dropped straight off, right there. So it really walked right in front of the tent and right by my head, and took that step off of that. And that's the last thing I remember is them taking that step, a long step. We'd kind of have to shuffle or scurry down this little bank, but it took like one step, and I heard a foot hit down there. And really, I just went on back to sleep, because in my mind, that was Larry Porch II in the middle of the night going to the bathroom. That's just what I thought, judging from where the the footsteps came from. The next morning, man, we're all still just tired, but we're packing up and, just kind of a little chit chat here and there. Did you hear any coyotes last night? Stuff like that. And I said, man, the only thing I heard was when Larry, walked around and went to the bathroom down there. And Larry never looked up. He said, man, I didn't go to the bathroom. And here's the thing about it. Now, as I sat there thinking about it, I thought, yeah, pretty much all guys, especially if you're in a tick and mosquito infested area, or you're just camping, period, you kind of keep something inside the tent to, use as your urine.
Right.
And so that kind of went through my head. And then he goes, did you hear a tent zipper unzip? And when he said that, I just got chills on my arms when he said that, because I knew nobody had unzipped their tent and got out. And the thing had walked, it had probably put its foot down 7 inches from my head, or 8 inches from my head, with me inside the tent.
Right. Oh my God. And that long step is a very telling piece of information, because, especially even in the daylight, we would shuffle down because of the angles. And how far of a step you think it was?
Oh my goodness. It was probably, I'm looking at one of my doors here that has the squares in it. It was probably maybe 4.5 foot step down.
We can't do that.
We could, but
yeah, might be the last time.
Yeah. But that, I thought about that, and they had put out trail cams. They'd put out a plot watcher. Really, on the field that we walked in and out of, they put out a plot watcher on that field. But they had some trail cams, and Mark and them are so slick. They really have their trail cams. Most of them are camouflaged now, or with a wood pattern or something like that. But they really even still put them inside actual wooden boxes,
Mm-hmm.
To where you could put them out there. uh, and they don't really tell anybody else where they. I'm saying that the person that put the trail cam out, they don't really tell anybody else where they put their own trail cam out. It's always been the thing that we do it at campouts. We did it at meet and greets. It's easier to, if you get something, it's easier to kind of rule out different things, or maybe try to be able to prove something, if nobody else knows it's
kind of a
there.
controlled, um, when you do experiment or whatever. That's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah. And
that,
another good thing on the little side note is Debbie Jones taught me this trick, and I use it a lot in my little hike and pack. Uh, I even have it in there. I have a black roll of thread, sewing thread in there. Well, she had went back in there off this little peninsula because it came to a point, and there was a creek ran through there. This little creek was close enough to us that you could hear it, running over there. And there's places in it where you could take a long jump and get across it, if that shows you how, big it was. So lots of rocks, in there for me and Shelly to go hunt. Uh, well, Debbie had gone back in there and she'd put a piece of black thread across, not a trail, just in the woods. Maybe, I don't know, 7 feet high, something along that line. And really, when I put thread out when I'm camping in the mountains or anything, so when I come back, see if anybody has been in my camp, or a bear or whatever it is. But her thread was broken, that she had put back there in in those trees back behind there. I really am laughing about it now, but the whole moral of the story is, after we get to walking out, me and Mark Newell are walking across this field together. It's early morning. There's dew out there in this grass. We're walking out there and we're just standing there. It's really pretty morning. And I said, why in the world did you pick this particular spot for us to camp at? And he looked at me, and he said, this is the field where those 13 howls came from, that you've heard online, that you talked about, stuff like that. Well, for people that don't know, here's the story. Several years ago, before I was even into Bigfoot, Mark, Larry, Shelly, and Debbie, and I don't know if anybody else was with them. Those are only four that I know of being there. They got out on this paved road, just driving down the road one night, stopped. I think what they saw was some deer on a FLIR out in the field. So they had stopped on the side of the road and they decided they were going to do a call there. But otherwise, they just kind of picked a random place on a roadway. And they got out and they did a call. And I'm wanting to say that I was told that it was Larry that did the call. And they get these vocals that come back. Not only vocals, but really good vocals, good, clear vocals. I'd like to hear it today if it had been recorded on some of the really more advanced, even little recorders they have today. So
Yeah.
this was recorded a few years ago. And in all that time of me trying to going through the internet and looking at stuff and reading on stuff, somehow I came across these vocals. Now, they really never had a name to them, but there's 13 howls that take place in this audio. So the next time we came back, we were going to take some people over there in a little group, and I said, let's just call it the Field of 13 Howls. So that's where the name comes from. But anyway, the vocals are some, like I said, previous audio. This belongs to them. It was recorded by them. I didn't have anything to do with this. I just love for people to listen to it because of the things that happen at the Field of 13 Howls. And let's listen to it a couple of times through, and then I'll tell you a few things that's happened. Now think about this, folks. This really is just one spot. in LBL. This is just a spot that we got lucky, a high percentage of something going on there. And LBL's massive. It's huge. And we just happened to hit on this one spot. But this is a recording that they did. And when you hear a person whisper and they say, "That's a booger," that's Larry Porch whispering that. I think he was holding the recorder. But run that thing a couple of times through, and y'all turn your volume up for a minute till this goes through, because we really want you to hear these.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead. I heard the first one and I turned it off immediately, and I'm like, so I'm gonna listen to the whole thing with you for the first time too. And let's see if this works, and it'll probably cut our mics off, I think. So what I'll do is I'll let it play through one time, and if it doesn't start back over, then we'll do it again. All right, y'all ready?
Good deal.
So this
Great.
is the Field of 13 Howls.
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
That's getting closer. That's a booger. Are those deer gone? Down at the other end of the field. One of them is. Be sure to check our bags. Two of them is. Don't forget about our bags. I already forgot it.
All right, let's do that. I don't know if y'all can hear me or not. Let's do it one more time. That's getting closer. That's a booger. Are those deer gone?
check our bags too, man. Don't forget about our bags. I already forgot it.
Did you see what the deer did?
Yeah,
deer,
and that's
they were spread out and came together in a group.
I had forgot that the FLIR was on there, and I can imagine what it would look like with some of the FLIRs that a couple of those guys have now are really really good
Right.
ones. But that was if you listen to that, uh, just picture looking at you're just standing on the roadway and you turn to your right, and you're looking across a field that's maybe 100 yards, and there's a tree line and there's a creek, a running creek uh, that goes through there, and that's the same little creek that crosses the roadway and the same creek that we were camping beside. And on the back side of that tree line is a really big field, and all these fields were wide open. Then you hit some hardwoods. It goes up a big, huge ridge top. So for people, the only reason I'm saying that is for people that go back and listen to it again, you can really tell that these howls started on the back side of that hill, on the other side of that hillside or that ridge up there, a long ways off.
Yeah.
And you could almost tell the exact howl when it gets to the top of that, where even though it's a long ways, it's really a direct shot of sound from
Exactly.
that thing down there. It sounds like it just gets more agitated, more agitated. And but here's the things that I've listened to it a bunch, because after Larry says that's a booger and it starts sounding agitated, those really raspy screams are the closest thing I've found to what I heard,
What you
you
heard.
know, camping that night.
And I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if you saw when I was on Mark's show. I had some audio, and they found 4 screams,
Yeah,
and very similar, way off. And I had something going crazy closer to us, and I was getting chills because the more I learned, we weren't that far from. It was in the daylight too,
yeah.
and this is why we're doing this, because I don't know how many of y'all have ever heard a howl, scream, or whatever. That right there, can you imagine standing there, no lights, and it just gives me chills. And thank you to Mark and Larry for letting us show that. That's it's their property, and I really appreciate that.
I really think that they captured one of the better pieces of audio that I've heard with prolonged things going on.
Mhm.
Uh, I've been around a lot of really good vocalists over the years, and when when that thing does a step up in octave, when it's doing one howl, that really got my attention uh, as being something odd or something very special. Uh, but when it got really raspy there at the end and just sounded out and out agitated, that was something else too. And I want people to realize that anytime we've recorded some pretty good vocals over the years, some of the people around me, I really take care of Moose. I got my FLIR. I keep an eye on him. I was a dog handler, so I keep an eye on him and watch what he's doing. Uh, Moose is a wimp. He's not a boogering dog by any means. But the good thing is he's quiet. He's well behaved. There's probably people that'll listen to this that have been in the back seat with him in the middle of the night in a pickup truck at LBL. Um, but yeah, I think they got one of the better pieces of audio, uh, that I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's and especially for the southeast. I've heard stuff from the northwest, and I don't know that I've heard anything east of the Mississippi that I have now. I've done a lot of researching on YouTube, and
Yeah.
you've done more than I have, but that's worth going back and listening to for anybody that's trying to learn.
Yeah.
What did the spectrograph say? I know Mark has one of that, and what did he? What was
I
his
have
analysis?
I have no idea. And Mark and them are this is an older recording. Now Mark and them will actually uh, they will mark in there the part that's unknown, that
Mhm.
it's just it falls somewhere in the area to where it's an unknown animal. They
Yeah.
will actually, if they get coyotes howling, it'll actually say coyotes on the screen and it'll point to where that part of it is, you know. And some, but most times the vocals are all together. If if people haven't done, there's lots of people that have, you know, been out there at night. But for people that haven't been out there at night, if you're standing there in that night air and you're listening to it with your own ears, it's crisper. The volume of it is louder. Uh,
Always.
you know, most people can judge distance pretty well, you know,
Mhm.
listening to volume.
Yep.
You can't do that on a recording.
No.
I imagine, you know, standing on that roadway, what those howls sounded like, because I just know the terrain that's there. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I found when he told me where we camped out at, I just I knew that they'd put us right in the middle of
Mhm.
of you know, they just threw us in the fire, you know, the
Ground
first.
zero. I
Yeah.
mean, would you have went if they told you that beforehand?
Uh yeah, I think I would, because up until that point I was still really iffy. You know, Bigfoot just I'm a scientific person. There was just I'm like, oh well, of course I believe, you know, but in my mind, I was like, man, I think something's going to have to happen, or I'm going to
Right.
have to see something, or something like that. Uh, well, after that, we kind of, you know, we get together more regular and go up there and camp, and uh, we've even had a few meet and greets up there where people that listen to the Sawdust Beast channel came, and some of those meet and greets have been huge. Uh, People have come from all over the country to those things, and that was kind of fun. Uh, you know, we even had one to where, I mean, we were just iced in. We call it the meet and freeze, because I mean, people that came to that one to meet people and just be around everybody. I mean, some people suffered that weekend. They're hardcore group members to come to that. But the thing about the Field of 13 Howls is when we have these campouts, sometimes we'll try to take people to that spot. If you get into a vehicle with us in 5 minutes at LBL at night, you don't know where you are. I
Right.
mean, it's just a maze of roads, and I don't know my way around there great. I'm usually looking at Larry's tail lights, you know, on his Jeep going where he's going. But we've taken people there on several occasions, had howls and stuff come back over there. Several times we've not got anything. On nights when we thought that we were sure to get something, you know, we wouldn't get anything. Oddly enough, you know, you don't get a whole lot on nights when the moon's bright
Mm.
outside. I don't know. It seems like a bit of a paradox. Um,
That's good information to have, though, with some of us just getting started.
but to tell one more story from that particular place of many, uh, we had there was a group of people camping, and so we kind of split up in different cars, and people had taken a couple of cars here and a couple of cars there. Uh, Oddly enough, we kind of mistimed it, and all those cars ended up at one time at the Field of 13 House on this roadway. So if y'all think about this, here's 4 cars. They're packed with people on the inside. And when we showed up and, you know, all those cars were there, we just thought, man, we're not going to get anything, you know, here. because people, it's hard for people to be really quiet.
Trust me, I know. They don't
So
realize how much noise they're making, and you're frustrated because you know that cracker wrapper that you just opened up, you could hear it 2 miles away. You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So man, we had finally got everybody out of the vehicles, and there's a little whispering here and there, and I don't mind. These are people that came to a big camp out. We've all had a good time. We're just taking, we're taking them out. I'm not the head of anything. We're just taking them out. Man, we're just having a good time
That's
that
what it's
we can
about.
all go back and talk about.
Right. That's fun.
Well, we had a guy with us who's well known in the Bigfoot world, one of the original Bigfoot outlaws, and that's Barry Browning, happened to be on this camp out with us. And Barry was in somebody else's car, and we're all out on this roadway. But Barry was at one of the front vehicles, so he was in the front group of people. And we're spread out along this road at night, and you really can't see anybody out there. You just hear, you get the sense that there's several people out there. Well, Barry does a call, and I'd never heard Barry do a call before. And he came out with a call, kind of an abbreviated one that we do a lot in our group. And I always say this: he smoothed that call off at the end like Barry White. It was that smooth at the end. And when he did that, everybody, even people whispering, got quiet. And man, you could hear that call kind of, go out over that field and filter through that little line of trees there. Well, right then, off in the far right corner, this long howl started. As fate would have it, Spencer Jameson happened to be right next to me again with his recorder. And when the howl started, I whispered to Spencer, I said, "That's over at Hog Pond." And that's what I named that little pond up there in the woods, because they would be looking for stuff, and I would be looking at more where hogs had rubbed on trees and for tracks and things along that line. And I whispered, "That's Hog Pond." And that howl went on long enough to where there were several "do you hear that" whispered, up and down the line there. But it went on for a long, clear, high-pitched howl. Because when I think about coyotes, or I think about one of our calls, this is always a lot higher pitched. I mean, it's way up there. But that call went on, and here's a strange thing. And this gets you off into a whole different thing, and we won't. But if you're going to be at LBL long enough, you have to get into this stuff just because of the way the area is. When that call, several people saw this. There were 15 people standing out there. Debbie Jones was a really good, witness to this. When that call ended, and it still kind of, echoed and hung out there, for a second, enough to where I think most people could turn around and pinpoint almost where it was coming from. One of the lights, that a star in the sky, went straight down and disappeared behind the trees where that call was. Now, folks, we're talking about a quarter of a mile away, but across fields where the sound could travel well. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that happen. I don't make any assumptions as to what it was, but several people, they saw it go down, and they commented right that second, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" Where it just went straight down. But that's just some of the things just from that particular place. That's just one spot. And like I said, that's one of the spots that 100% of the time we go hit that spot just to, see if we can get anything.
You have to. Yeah.
And it's just, and we're real picky about who we take over there. In the nighttime, it's fine. In the daytime, we haven't really taken a few people over there. If we were having a very small camp out with some people, we've, taken them over there. So there just won't be a whole lot of vehicles and stuff parked over there on the side of the road where we go into this
Right.
place. But man, that's the story of the Field of 13 Hounds.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I I've gotten to know Spencer and pretty well. We text back and forth, and um, I guess I'm the newbie of the bunch, and I'm wanting to learn, and I appreciate y'all. And you are exactly right. I told people we need to document this stuff because it could be 20 years from now, and something in this story that you just told will be very important, to somebody in the future, or people actually need to know this stuff because um y- you don't need to go out by yourself looking for this making I wouldn't have think you would, but because like me and my son, we were pretty heavy there for about 6 weeks, my son and my wife, and I think we made something one or more things mad, and that's when we got basically ran out of there.
Yeah.
And that high pitched how I'm glad I heard this because now I understand when Mark told me just before I went on his show, he sent the recording back over. He said it falls into that category of unknown and what we think would be a booger. I
Yeah.
sat down on my bed because I heard two of them. I didn't hear the other two. I sat down. I had like 20 minutes to go on, and I didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
But thank you. You wanna sometime No Rud, you wanna do a part 2 sometime, maybe?
That'll be fine with me.
And it's no
Uh,
rush. I mean, I appreciate you so much,
if
because
there's anybody that I don't know how they haven't listened to it by now, because I've told it on so many shows. If there's anyone that hasn't heard originally what happened there when I was there, then maybe we'll go over that on the next show.
okay, and it's a
I'm the type
very
of I'm the type of person that I listen to people's encounters over and over. I get a
mhm,
little something out of it, and as we close out, I want to say this, and I tell Spencer this. I tell the guys on the Sawdust. uh, Let's give a little shout out to those guys.
yeah,
The Woodwalkers channel, which is Spencer and
mhm,
Misty's channel. Sawdust Beast, which is Mark Newell and Larry Porch. Larry has Beast of the Woods. There's lots of great interviews on, you know, all those channels from
absolutely.
knowledgeable people. Uh, Everybody's kind on there. Um, but yeah, uh, there's let me say this. Just a word of advice to people if you're new into this. Find people that you would just want to hang out with normally. Just on a regular basis. I mean, you're not going to end up with a group where everybody has great similarities other than the subject of Bigfoot or cryptids or something, because our group is incredibly diverse. At our campouts when people show up, it really is a vast array of occupations and past, and just everybody has stories, just life stories, not just
Mhm,
about Bigfoot. And that's one of the great things is if you're getting into this, man, take a little chance and don't be shy. And I don't think we've ever had anybody just pull up to one of our campouts and not get out and say later on that, man, I just felt like I knew all those people right away. Because
mhm,
man, when people pull up at ours, we know how it is I know how it is to show up with some people you don't know.
yeah,
And so, uh, I've had people show up at one of our meet and greets, and and I went and spoke to them, and they literally didn't know anybody there. They just watched the show. They came alone and probably drove 6 or 7 hours. Now think about
wow,
I mean, that's brave,
that is
to
very
do that.
brave. I made
Uh,
fun of one of my buddies. He's going. It actually a haunted house. He got invited down in Alabama, and I'm like, well, I hope there's not duct tape and a basement in your future. He said, now I'm scared. I said,
yeah,
well,
no kidding.
do you know these people? I get to meet. I'm going to get to meet Spencer in November. He's coming down this way, so he came 15 miles from my house last time he went to
Yeah,
Alabama. I said, you got to tell me because I'm on the way. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe sharing a cigar with him and a sip of bourbon or whatever. And you know that this community, the people that they're interested in the same things. I told my wife and my son today. I said, some of these people that I've met and talked to and listened talk, on the shows that I haven't really met. I said it's like people that I grew up with. It's and we had a store on the interstate for 28 years. You talking about diverse?
right.
We had our customers, so I'm at home
Yeah,
meeting new people, and I love it. And I appreciate all the help. Sawdust Beast guys, I've got it's scrolling on the bottom there. Two T's. That's exactly the way it's spelled, and that you can go to the YouTube page. But Mark, he didn't know me. He reached out and he said, "I heard you had audio. Can I go over it?" And I wasn't expecting. I couldn't hear it on my phone. Like you said, you
yeah,
can record something, and it never sounds like it did live. And for him to actually pull that out of there and us get to hear it again was amazing that he would do that. So yeah, and I've listened to your stories. You're such a great storyteller. Um, I appreciate that. I appreciate a good storyteller. Putting people there with you, painting that picture. And a lot of people can't do that, and it's a gift actually. So,
I'll say this. Some people on here know Greg House.
hmm yeah,
Uh, and he's an Alabama guy, doesn't live too far from me. I've told him, I've told Spencer, I've told this to Mark and lots of other people. Uh, when somebody gets on there and tells their encounter, like I told you, long after we're dead and gone, that's still going to be there. People are still going to hear that encounter, just
hmm
like we still think about uh, encounters that are quote unquote famous encounters, like Mike Woolley when he was hunting, or the late Kerry Arnold. His. I told this to I think Mike Bluler. I hope
hmm
I'm saying his name right.
that's right.
Uh, his account and the good description that he gives when he tells the account, uh, people are going to be listening to that long after we're gone.
You
Uh,
said this one night in chat, but you got us confused. But Mike, you said I know what you meant. You said Mike's encounter is probably one of the top Class A encounters of all time, and I agree. And a little tidbit on that, I didn't know Mike. I heard him on a podcast riding home one evening, and it was a regular guy. And some of the details that he gave made some things that happened to me make sense. And he gave his email out. And I'm like, should I? No, should I? And I did. And if it hadn't been for that, hearing him, his encounter, and I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be meeting all these great people. I wouldn't be getting an education, which is what I'm here for.
yeah, really, I I think Spencer and Misty's the first one that he told his account to on their uh, YouTube show. Uh, and when we heard it, uh, Mark and Larry interviewed him on their show. Well, on the Sawdust Beast page, I have my own show, maybe once a month. Uh, the last guest I had on was really good. I had Vic Cundiff on
Mm-hmm.
my show this last time. But I've had, interviewed several people on several different subjects. And uh, I had Greg on, and when he told his account, he's so descriptive also that we ended up, I think, doing a 4-parter with him. When we did
Yeah.
that. Uh, but yeah, he's Greg's a good storyteller. He's very descriptive. And for people who have been in the woods and stuff like that, when I try to tell the story to where we have a library of sounds in our head. We have a library of smells in our head from life experiences, that we've had, our whole lives, no matter what environment you live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to tell it to just where people will feel like they're there.
Yes.
I taught report writing procedures for several years, and I would tell guys all the time, I would go, man, write it like it's going to come back on you.
Yeah.
I go, write it to where nobody can ask you a question, write it to where there's nothing left to the imagination. I used to say, to the exclusion of all others.
I don't know if you know this or not. Right out of high school, I worked at the sheriff's department here, and I had to write reports. I wasn't a deputy. That was my goal, to be a detective eventually. But I was learning everything. They were taking me out with them. I was looking at crime scene photos, but I was doing my job as a dispatcher and jailer, and so that descriptive writing got me hung into part of a job I didn't want to be in. I was mad one night and I was writing my report of some incidents. And when I got in at 6 o'clock, I had the 6A to 6P shift, and the supervisor was a little bit balding up here, and he had his head down and he was red laughing. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He said, "Reading your damn report from last night." I said, "It ain't funny. I was mad." He said, "But it's great. It covered everything." But I know what you're saying. And that's one thing the sheriff told me. I said, "Can I go back to this other job?" He said, "No, I need you writing your reports because they're detailed. You don't leave anything out, and we can go back if we need to." And so with hunters, I'm comfortable in my woods. When I say Tennessee, southern middle Tennessee, and
Yeah.
others, I'm sure. But like out west, I wouldn't have that bank of sounds in my head where I would know
Right.
what was coming. So yeah, it's
You're
different.
absolutely right.
So
I wanted to tell you, everybody listening to this, next time we'll talk a little about LBL, and we'll tell you where these tracks were cast at.
oh my goodness, I've never seen that.
Well, this is just to give people a little teaser. Uh, at an actual meet and greet event, somebody stumbled onto a trackway in a muddy flat in a bay
Wow.
where the water was down low. So not only was there a track, but there was probably 15 or 20 tracks
That's
and different types of substrate and gravel and all kinds of stuff. This is one of the first tracks, in the mud, and I've even got it written on the back here. This is a third cast in the set. So there's
wow.
only two other people that have this particular cast, and that's the two people that actually found the trackway. And we can
Wow.
talk about that later, because that was a lot of fun that
I
day.
bet. I've never, I had the experiences and I saw one when I was 14, but I've never ever found what I thought was a track. And after you see one, you start looking, and it's
Be-
rare. It's really rare.
Just to say, these are the only discernible ones I've ever seen,
Yeah.
and was skeptical as I made the long muddy trudge over to see the
Yeah.
trackway. But we'll get into all that later. That
Hey,
was a fun weekend, a fun meet and greet weekend, and but we ended up, something always happens to us while we're
and
out.
that's what it's about. You hang out with your friends, doing something that you enjoy doing, and you never know, because you could go a million times and nothing happened, but as long as you got people there you're spending time with, that's what it's about. So,
Man,
and Greg just slipped in here on the end.
hey, sneaky, just slipping
Yeah.
in. Yeah, just man, everybody has been it's been nice being on. I appreciate you asking me to be on. And I really didn't know how to start because I've told the same story, on so many different things. I had somebody this year ask me to go to a conference, and I've never been to a conference, and I just thought, what am I going to talk about at a conference? I mean, really, Bama ain't nobody. I've seen some things and stuff, but I just thought, what would I do at a conference? I always joke and say this to people when I interview them and stuff. The subject of Bigfoot and cryptids and stuff, it really is the only subject where you can become famous. My better half's coming in, Moose is barking. It's the only subject where you can become famous by simply riding down the road with your kids and one crosses the road in front of you.
Yeah. And it's such a rare thing, though, Bama.
You saw one. You're famous.
It's so rare. The more that I get into this, the footprint that is so rare that you're so blessed to have that experience to get to see that physical trackway. All right, but yeah, I thank you for coming. I had a lot of fun, and we'll do part 2 at your whenever. It's no
Hang
hurry.
on a second. My better half's coming. My better half's coming in the door here. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who's in the chat, everybody listening, and man, me and you'll get together soon, and we'll do us up a part 2. Let me get
hopefully
I'll get Kel to shake her head in here a second.
Hello.
Hey, Roger.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Quick and easy.
Do you ever get tired of his stories?
What's that?
Does she ever get tired of your stories?
Never.
She says never, but really, I don't. I don't really talk. She kind of knows everything I've done. Yeah. I'm not sitting around talking about it all the time, but no, she's great. And listen, she camps with us. I mean, she's been on campouts with us. Me and her hike all the time. Her and Moose and I really camp in some pretty remote places in the mountains, but she's been out with us at night boogering and stuff like that. She heard the howl she heard the howl from Hog Pond where the light came down and went behind the tree. So she's been out there with us some.
Well, I'm gonna have to get on to Spencer for sandbagging, holding back some audio. I didn't know about that.
Thank you very much. Everybody in the chat, be safe, and we'll see you on one of the other shows. Y'all know I'll be in the chat with y'all on one of the other shows.
Yeah, chat's fun. I love watching Woodwalkers and Beast TV and being in a chat because it's like being in a classroom with your friends. The way I look at it,
It is.
But thank you, Bama. I appreciate you so much, and we got to do this again, sir.
Yes, sir. We'll do a part 2.
Okay. You have a good night.
All right. Peace, y'all.
Thank y'all. Everybody in chat. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good night.